Hey everybody, today I'm going to do a live coding exercise, but I'm going to try to make the focus of this video really be a little bit more about story time, and I'm just going to tell you about my history in the Zulip project, and I'm probably going to kind of ramble, so I hope you're up for that if you're watching this video. I do think I have some things to tell. My main audience is people that are developing or using the Zulip software. Um, Zulip is a free software product. It was originally developed in either 2013 or maybe even 2012, so it's about a decade old. And there are a bunch of different repos for Zulip, but the main repo is the repo. Uh, when I say repo, I just mean repository. The main repository for Zulip has the code that allows you to see their web-based interface, and that's something that I have contributed to for a little bit over a decade because I joined the Zulip project in 2013, and as I'm recording this video, it is May 10th, 2023. And if you go to the main repo for Zulip, you can see that the main contributor is Tim Abbott, and he's the lead developer of the Zulip open source team chat for thoughtful collaboration. Very, very appropriate way to describe himself. And I could do an entire video about Tim. Second most prolific contributor is Anders Ksorg. Whoops, I didn't mean to click on him, but okay, here he is. And Anders, I don't know if he has an official title, but he's basically like the senior architect for Zulip. Incredibly smart, incredibly hardworking. Everything that he's done for the project has just made it better. And then finally you get to me. So here I am. By the way, this is a picture of me on a sailboat. I used to do a lot of sailing when I lived in Seattle. But okay, so I wanna get to story time a little more later, but I want to show you what I'm working on because I want this to be kind of a hands-on kind of thing. So Zulip has this top left panel, which I call the convenience panel, and I think the code that Zulip has to implement this is not fairly sound. It is sound, but I think there's a better way to implement it. So I've been doing a kind of like a personal project where I try to kind of reverse engineer this component here, and reverse engineer is sort of the wrong term because I don't have to actually reverse engineer it. Zulip's free software, which is great, and I can just like read the code for anything that where I have some questions about how to implement something. So I've totally cribbed off their code, and some of the code that I'm cribbing off of is code that I actually contributed to the product. But excuse me, here's what I'm trying to work on today. So I have this all messages. Let me open the console. I have this all messages convenience helper, which in my development of the component only, logs onto the console. I can pop up the menu and I can launch recent conversations. And then I have this little Francais button. And if I click on the Francais button, it says tous les messages, conversations récentes. And let me reload. So I encourage people to if you're a little patient with me sort of thinking and rambling, just speed up the video by up to 1.5. But let's get to some coding tasks. So what I want to do here, I have all messages, recent conversations. I want to add mentions. And mentions is almost the exact same code as recent conversations. You'll notice here that all messages has this little V dot menu, and it has an unread counter, whereas recent conversations doesn't have as much stuff going on, and the same is true for mentions. Now, I don't really condone copy paste code, but um, it's sometimes useful to just build out a component in such a way that you like the design pattern of it, and don't try to like overly abstract out things. And I think that's like I think that's a good segue for me to show you what recent conversations, I want to show you what the recent conversations component looks like. And I'll focus, let me resize the window a little bit here so that sometimes when you record videos, like things get clipped on the left side. But basically, I have this recent conversations component. It borrows some helpers from panel helpers, and then I build up the DOM. So I call build list item, which again comes from this panel helpers. I build up the main link. I append the main link to the to the list item, and then I return the li in the main link. I mean, this is like super simple code, and you know, this is the main link, and then I can probably show you most effectively in the inspector. So the main link is an anchor tag that has style-panel main link, and it sits inside this list item. So like really simple code. And then I have this fully build method. The fully build method has this function called repopulate text. And again, if we go back to here and I click on the, si je clique on le français bouton, oui, il y a beaucoup de français, le texte est français or something like that. I don't actually know how to speak French even. I took 6 years of it. But yeah, so there it is. So I have this repopulate text, which I return when I'll show you the calling code here. When you call fully build, it returns the list item so that the caller can put the list item in the container, and then it returns the method repopulate text. Repopulate text just uses translate, which comes from the services that are passed into fully build, and then it translates recent conversations. And if I go to the handlers, this is my janky code to translate things from to French. And by the way, like, this code here is not code that I'm trying to convince Zulip to use. This is code that helps me just test out the infrastructure of this component. All right, so let me see. Let me start by, I'm gonna just stop my, oh, well, that's unfortunate. Yeah, so I use putty sometimes. The web server gets stuck. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to go, let me just see what I have first. So I have all these JavaScript components, and my goal for today is basically to implement mentions in the same way that I implement recent conversations. So I'm going to copy recent conversations component to mentions component. And they're going to add that. Let's see. I got to go back into Vim. I'm going to edit mentions component. I'm going to call it mentions component. Do you see how my little brain works? I'm just way. Let's see. Recent conversations component. I'm gonna call that mentions component. I hope I pluralized that right. Yeah, I did. Okay. So I basically duplicated this component. I've added it to index.html. I've correctly updated the namespace. I think at this point I just want to see if I did it right. So, reload. Oh, I know I missed a step. Oh, and I also forgot to start the web server. Actually, before I know what step I missed. So I'm gonna Vim. I am gonna edit convenience panel. And let's see, what do I need to do here? So I'm creating the recent conversations. I need to create mentions in essentially the same way. Yeah, I'll want to eventually translate it. And I think that's it. Let me run on the web server. And the console should tell me something. Mentions component is not defined. Okay. And that's happening in convenience panel. And and it's because I need to copy paste essentially one more thing. And let me see if I can. I'll just exit Vim and run the web server. This is kind of annoying. I'm not demonstrating the most effective way to develop. But okay, so now I have a copy of recent conversations. So it's progress. And if I translate into French, I get the same thing. But I clearly need to edit my mentions. So yeah, I promise this is kind of story time. So before I get into that, so yeah, like this is amazing. Zulip has had 839 contributors to its project. And that's only including the main repo. Like I'm leaving out some like major subsidiary repos. In fact, I should just show you those. So Zulip not only has the main application, they have this very important mobile app. They have this very nice terminal application. There's Zulip Desktop, which I'm not so fond of. Like, I don't understand why people need to create desktop apps when you have web apps, but whatever. I mean, like, you can see that they're, it's important to some people. It's not important to me. So I'll just leave it at that. You've got the Python Zulip API. And you have people that want to run Zulip in their Docker containers, and I don't know anything about Docker other than like the most obvious things that people know. But people have contributed to that. So this is just like an amazingly um, large project in a good way. Like just like I said, you have over 800 contributors just to the main repo itself. Um, so and here I am again. So let me get back to coding here. So I have conversation récent, conversation récent, and I want to start converting. Let me go back to English. So I'm just doing a hard reload here. Yeah, I gotta start the web server. Okay, so I have recent conversations. And let me go into the editor. Learn how to type. Whoops, I want to go into mentions. That's the one that I actually want to change. And I want to see, what is the icon? Let's see. That little at thingy. Let me inspect that. Okay, FA at. Okay. Good naming choice as far as I'm concerned. So let's call it FA at. And then what is, let me close the inspector. I am trying to interleave story time here. Probably guess by my accent that I'm American. I was born in the state called Pennsylvania in 1969, and I am in the year 2023 currently 53 years old. Okay, so let's see. The href for this guy is hashtag narrow. I can't point to it because as soon as I point to it, you guys can't see it. But if you look in the very bottom left corner, you can see that the href for mentions is hash narrow slash is slash mentioned. And I already forgot what it was. Narrow is mentioned. So anyway, yeah, because I was born in 1969, when like you really started to get like computers that were affordable for like like middle class American people. It was like probably about like 1983, 1984, and like the computers were completely barbaric. But I think the first computer that my parents bought for me, I definitely remember, it was a TI 99 4A, and I think it was like literally like $99, which is like actually pretty cheap. But it wasn't a great computer, so like I had friends in the neighborhood who had like some of the really early Apple computers, and I would go over to their house and program on the computer. Um, I'll try to hold that that thread in my head to tell you some stories there, but let me make some progress here on the coding. Let's see. So this says recent conversations, and I wanted to say mentions. And I need to fire up the web server. Go here. Okay, so I'm making some progress. So yeah. So my parents bought me the computer. I think I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I had some friends that were also interested in computers. And like I would just go over to their house, and like I was just naturally good at it. It was just like a talent that I had. And my parents actually got divorced when I was in middle school, and my father's brother owned a sailboat, so we would do a lot of sailing. And and they would race the sailboats. And when you race sailboats, you have to make this like if you really want to be like kind of hardcore about it. You need to make this trigonometry calculation. It's called velocity made good. This is like a really long story, so I'll cut it short. But basically, like I needed to write some like trigonometry programs for helping my uncle's sailboat crew to make the boat go faster. And my dad, who's not like a mathematician or anything, but he like remembered enough high school trigonometry, and he taught me the trigonometry, and I like immediately picked up on it, and then I programmed the computer to print out all of these computations. So that was like probably the first really useful program that I wrote. Okay, but let's get back here. Actually, let's go here. What do I have here so far? Okay, so notice that when I click on mentions, it says launch recent conversations. I want it to launch actual mentions. So let me go back into Vim. Let me go to my handlers. And let me clone this method here. Say launch mentions view. So yeah, back to story time. So like my parents bought me that computer, and the it was called the TI 40 or TI 99 for A or whatever, and it was made by this American company called Texas Instruments, and they had this like amazing tutorial on how to program, and it was literally basic, like the programming language basic, which I don't know if anybody under the age of like 30 remembers anymore. But I just like learned the tutorial and I just learned how to program. And the first thing I did was like try to like make a little game, a boggle game. I think I have to show people that too. I'm like really showing my age here. So boggle, yeah, boggle game. Boggle classic game. Yeah, so the way this game worked is basically like from a software mechanics standpoint, I basically had to figure out, like at the age of 12 with this totally barbaric language called BASIC, how to like print out 16 random letters. And again, the tutorial was just so far ahead of its time that I was able to kind of figure it out. And then tried to write like a little version of Pac-Man, like a very, very primitive version of Pac-Man. Pac-Man was this like incredibly amazing video game that came out in the 1980s. And again, I'm 53 years old, so when Pac-Man came out, I was probably like, I don't know, 12 or 15 or something. But yeah, I think Pac-Man is still like sort of in the pop culture where people would know it that are like 30 years younger than me, but maybe not. Okay, so let's get back to business here. So I'm trying to make sure that the mentions links are correct. So let's see. I've added launch mentions, but I'm not actually integrating it. Um, and the service code kind of automatically gets marshaled through the convenience panel to the particular line item in the convenience panel. So I'm going to go directly to my mention component. And I am going to wire up the handlers. But I'm going to launch mentions. I'm going to reload this. And I'm going to remember to run the web server. Again, like this is like, I usually have a little bit of a better developer setup than this. When you're recording videos, like you don't want to like open terminals and like copy paste your password and do stupid stuff like that. So I'm feeling slightly hindered, but okay. So mentions. Okay, so now I'm launching the mentions view. But if I click on my Francais button, I am not translating mentions. So I need to figure out the French translation of mentions, and I'm going to do it by using Zulip because Zulip has built-in translations for French. They're not like 100% complete, but they're pretty good. And it is a good exercise if you're working on Zulip, if you're like slightly bilingual, to occasionally just like drop into like a non-English or non your primary language translation of Zulip, just so you kind of get a feel for what it's like for your French friends or Spanish friends or whatever. So I'm going to go into my personal settings. I'm going to change the language to Francais. And I'm going to reload. And by the way, the fact that I need to reload here is one of the things that I am hoping I can improve in the Zulip code by building my component here, where if I just like reload this guy, when I hit the Francais button, you will notice that the component does not have to reload because I've carefully constructed the API in such a way that the live updates are like completely natural. And I'll try to remember to show you that in a second. But conversation récente. See. Okay, so mentions in French is mention. Okay, well that's a bummer if I don't actually have to translate that. Let me see if that's actually being translated. Again, I told you my French is rusty. Google Translate. Mentions. Why is that not pluralized in French? I'm not going to dwell on this too much. What I'm going to do is just show you how the things get connected. So I have this UI class or module that calls when I hit the French button, little FR button. When I hit the French button, it calls panel repopulate text with the translation services. The services come from the services come from the handlers. And here's the translation service, which again I'm just emulating. I'm not trying to reinvent translation. Zulip already has that component. And then I call repopulate text with the panel. This panel comes from calling fully build. Fully build comes from convenience panel. And everything in the Zulip namespace basically has a one-to-one correspondence with file name. So I go into convenience panel. Here's the fully build method. It has this repopulate text thing that it returns. And then every one of these guys, like if I look at all messages component, it has a repopulate text method. And whenever you call repopulate text, it takes the all messages, finds the main link within it, finds the span within that, and then sets the inner text of that. Again, this is like, or not again, but this is like really easy to audit from a security perspective. Like if I'm just like mucking with inner text, then you know this code is safe. But I translate all messages, and that is why gotta start the web server. And that is why when I click the little Francais button, this all messages becomes tous les messages. All right, I'm gonna end there. Please like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Particularly if you have questions about the history of Zulip. I sort of promised this would be story time, but I did want to kind of focus on like actually doing some coding and let you just kind of see how my little brain works. All right, thanks, people. Have a nice day.